I can sense it in the air, though it isn't physical. I feel you everywhere, and when I miss you, I feel love, love in a new dimension. And though I miss you, I feel love, love in a new dimension. You left me in sadness, but I know you're smiling. Moments you touch me, leave me crying. Though I miss you, I feel love, love in a new dimension. Oh, ooh, cause when I miss you, I feel love, love in a new dimension. Though I miss you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just love his voice. And don't forget there's CDs out front. Yeah, take that with you. Hi. How are you? Very good. We're excellent. Yes. Okay, so I'll get started here. Our theme for the month is wholeness. We are whole. Our theme for today, the fourth Sunday of November, is this. We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul forever and ever expanding. That comes from a document that was written a long time ago called What We Believe, and it was some people who got together and wrote ideas that Ernest Holmes talked about. But the topic itself that we will focus on is immortality, which is kind of a favorite subject of mine. And it comes at an interesting time because tomorrow night our foundations class, the students, is to class number 9, and the topic is immortality. So take notes. We'll talk about it tomorrow night. This is your class right here. So, because it's important. Yeah, it is. So, here we go. I'm going to do a few more quotes because sometimes you can't just take my word for this. This is a common, universal idea of immortality in some form. So Panache Desai says, "You are not the limitations that have been spoken over you. Your energetic signature is infinite, and as a vibrational being, nothing can limit you." From Plato, The Republic, Book 10, speaking to Glaucon. "Are you not aware," I said, "that the soul of man is immortal and imperishable?" Plato goes on to discuss the effects of good and evil, what it does to the life, but it cannot damage or turn the soul. A Zen student goes to his master and asks, "What happens when you die?" And the Zen master replies, "I don't know." And the student says, "Well, no, you're the master. You're supposed to know everything." And the master replies and says, "Well, I'm not a dead master." The Tibetan Book of the Dead is an instruction manual. Did you know that? I didn't at first. I couldn't figure out what that was. Okay, but I did learn. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is an instruction manual for those who are near death to be alert, to be fearless, and undistracted for the travel that the soul will do after the body dies. They will experience the clear white light of universal mind. If the deceased can recognize it as their own fully awakened nature, they may merge with it. But if they are not aware and they do not recognize this light as their own fully awakened nature, they must continue to travel, work through growing levels of fear and possible lower levels of choice of what happens. Ernest Holmes from This Thing Called You. The soul is the one triumphant, indestructible, and unconquerable thing that you possess. Shot from the invisible into this experience, it constitutes your greatest reality. But why wait for physical death to enjoy and experience life? Do not prepare to die, prepare to live. Whether you are 10 years old or 100, it is impossible for you to die. Stop trying to die and learn to live. So my title for today's talk is The Divine Nature. My divine nature is immortal and abundant. And why would you put those two terms together, immortal and abundant? Well, it kind of makes sense to me because since we're made from God, that Most High, that source of everything, everyone, everything made in the image of something that is totally whole, when we realize and really know that, and that we are immortal, we are absolutely abundant in everything. We are whole. We never lose what we are created as and what we are created with. So, from our little booklet, What Religious Science Teaches, we learn that each person is an incarnation of God. So then our soul is God individualized, and therefore eternal as God is eternal, because God makes all out of itself. And since it is impossible to exhaust the limitless nature of God, which means we cannot use it up, our expansion must be an eternal process of unfolding from a limitless center. There are many cultures that claim some kind of continuity after death, a life after death, and immortality. And so some are the ancient Greek religions, and then we have Islam and Christianity, of course, Hinduism, Judaism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, Jainism, Sikhism, and Buddhism. Ism. And then to be fair, and we go to the other side of the coin, there are a few who do not believe in any afterlife at all. And Epicureanism is one of them. He's the early Greek philosopher Epicurus. He did not believe in afterlife. And then Jehovah's Witnesses are interesting. They have a sliding behavioral scale. So if you are good, you go to the afterlife. And if you are not good, lights out. And atheism. No God, no afterlife. Make it up. Shouldn't have said that. Sorry. There used to be a minister that was with our center many, many years ago. And one of his favorite phrases, what that'll really get you thinking is, it's all God and you make up the rest. Think about that. So I want to take this into a little different direction for a moment. There's a lot of information now, stories, books, movies, about near-death experiences. Fascinating topic for me. I love to hear people recant their stories about how they died and then they live to tell about it. You know, the energy in the room changes when they talk about that. And most describe similar experiences. They describe the light. Some have the light tunnel they go into. Some have a review. Many talk about a love that is almost undescribable in our human words. Many talk about who meets them. It is the familiar faces that people have died before them. And some talk about the religious figure or spiritual figure that may meet them. And it's the one that represents their specific line of faith as they die. Many talk about meeting Jesus, but many talk about meeting other spiritual figures. So it's really where their consciousness is at the time. I find that very fascinating. I remember a few days before my father died, he was bedridden with cancer. He could not move. The lights were low, the curtains were drawn on the windows, and the windows were the ones that are kind of like in the top half of the wall. See a lot of some houses, the older houses like that. And so he couldn't see out the window, but he kept talking about somebody who was in the backyard. There was a man leaning against a tree waiting for him. My father would describe what he looked like, what he was wearing. My mom would say, Bill, there's nobody out there. She'd say, no, he's there. Don't let him in. My mom would describe that the house felt so crowded, she couldn't move. The dog would sit there like it was watching people. Like that. So, things happen. There are experiences that people have. Many people have had visitations from members who have died. My father visited me many times after he died. And boy, out of all the people in my family, he was the least I would have expected. But he came back with so much love, at just such intricate times. It was really a surprise. I worked with a girlfriend a number of years who disappeared. The police know what happened. They're pretty sure. They can't put their finger on it to make... Well, no, they did. They did do some things, but they've never found her body. 3 days into the search for her, I had a dream about her. I went to work the next day, and I said, wow, I dreamed about her last night. 2 women ran up to me immediately and said, I dreamed about her last night. And we all described her wearing the same thing, same outfit, and she gave all 3 of us the same message. And as we described it, we had a few different words, but it was the same message. My dream was sitting with her on a sofa in her living room. And I said, where have you been? Everybody's looking for you. And she said, it's okay. I said, well, are you coming back? When are you coming back? And she says, no, I'm not. Why would I? Well, they're looking for you. She goes, no, it's all okay. So then she went on to visit me 3 or 4 times over like a 6-month period. And on her last visit, she said, I won't be back. I want to say goodbye because it's time to move on. That has always sat with me. It was pretty strong. One of our greatest fears is death. Or some say, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to feel it when it happens. My dad was a pilot. He flew single-engine and twin-engine planes. He used to always say that when I die, I want to go peacefully in my sleep, not like everybody else in the back of the plane who's screaming. My mom said she was not afraid to die. She had sat with a number of people in the family who had passed. When my dad died, she saw a light come out from his chest and actually move to the ceiling. And for a minute there, she thought there must have been a car that went by. But the curtains were closed. There was no other way for light to get into the room, but it was startling, and it was so visible to her. So she wasn't afraid to die until she was. 4 days before she passed, I was sitting with her, and I just was afraid to leave her. So I just sat there and I watched her, and she was taking a nap, and then I realized she didn't take a breath. And I got closer, and I just sat there and I watched the color change in her face, and she didn't breathe, and her lips relaxed, and her tongue relaxed. And I thought, oh my word, I just saw my mom die. And then she shot up like a cannonball. I was like, Mom! She's like, don't let me go to sleep again. And I just like, well, what happened, Mom? What did you see? And she's like, she wouldn't talk about it. She just crossed her arms like, and then she relaxed and kind of laid back down again. But it's like, she wasn't afraid until she was. So there's lots of stories. We could all go on forever with some stories, but they are fascinating, aren't they? I like it because it gives me a tangible construct to show me that there is something else that happens. There's something that goes on. When you hear other people's stories, it really gives you something to hold on to. And it's fascinating. It's not just lights out theory. I had a friend that used to just call it the light switch theory, actually, because he's absolutely firm and clear that this is the only chance we get. You make the best of it, and when you die, that's it. End of story. And that's okay. It's okay that's okay. Whatever anybody thinks about that is really okay for them. Ernest Holmes describes immortality as continuing to live after we have left this world and to have the meaning of life continue. It must be with full recollection of the self and with the ability to recognize our environment, to know and to be known. We must be able to see and be seen, to understand and be understood. We continue as a conscious being. Remembrance, the process actually of remembrance, is vital because it is the memory that links the sequences of our life together in continuity. Our personal consciousness is the total memory of all that we have been between incarnations, such as our life purpose, our themes, maybe some people call it a map of our life, our choices, and even our intentions. And it also includes that in-between space. There are psychologists that study this particularly, that hypnotize people and talk about what happens between lives. And that in itself is also very fascinating. Now, science of mind does not specifically talk about reincarnation. So that's not the purpose of this. And that belief is left up to every person, as I've said. However, the statement that I just made was that there is a conscious memory that consists between incarnations. So we have to make sense of that for ourselves. It has to have a personal meaning. But what we are saying is that this full consciousness is what does go on to the next experience, whatever that may look like or in your knowing. Okay? After the physical body dies, maybe there is something. Do we come back? I like to think so. I'm one of those ones that likes to think so. It would answer questions for me if I had multiple lives. But I know that not everyone likes that. It's okay. And so it's not just pleasing and satisfying and reassuring for some to know that our life goes on or that we have a next life experience, whatever it is, with full retentions of our faculties, but it's also logical. Jesus revealed himself to his followers after his resurrection, and the point of it was to show them that death is just the passing to a higher sphere of life and action. The Buddhists believe that life and death are not separate events. One flows to the next in perfect harmony. Ernest Holmes says that to know that we maintain our identity independent of the physical body is proof enough of immortality. So maybe we ask them, why are we here? Some say it's for the Creator, for that God source, whatever that term is for you, to have a greater, varied, or diverse experience and abundant knowing of itself. Well, wait a minute, if God is everything, wouldn't it already know that? Yes, but from a perspective of wholeness. So when we are, as individuations of God, we are created whole, but we are also created with our own sense of creativity, the creative process, and with choice, with free will. So there are those of us who are not always creating love and happiness. We create other things. And sometimes we even create a path for ourselves that moves us even away from God light. And that's personal choice. And so God knows each of his creations from all of that varied activity. So that's why that is. I don't know about you. Sometimes I have been in close quarters out in public. Maybe I'm in line at the bank or at the grocery store, or I'm sitting on an airplane with somebody and the person next to me decides to create their own personal happiness, which is not my happiness. Right? Been there? So, that's the diversity. And that's all the differences that we are as individuations. And so that's what God gets to experience through all these different kinds of people. And so that's good. Our lives are very diverse, as I'm saying. We have many emotions, many behaviors, many feelings, many ideas, many directions. And it's all perfect. Why do we have a body? Our body is our self-expression in the world of form. It is the clothes for our consciousness and for our soul. It is our vehicle to do our work and purpose in third-dimensional reality. We have to have something to ground us here. And it is our tool to express and utilize the things we create with our choice. And when we are done, when we are complete, we release the clothes and we lay them to rest. And our light, our soul moves out and moves on out of third-dimensional reality to the next greater expansion, the next experience, and back into the God substance and that light. In New Thought philosophy, as students of science of mind, you're not held to any concrete form or idea that I have said this morning. You get to choose. As I said in the beginning, we do believe in some form of the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the soul, the individual soul. And there are scientists out there who will totally debunk everything I've said today. I've read some of their stuff, and I think, how did they get that? And they're looking at the stories and thinking, how did they get that? So we have our ideas. But you are free to discover, you are free to uncover, you are free to fully realize what immortality means to you personally. What's nice about our philosophy is that we don't make you check your mind at the door. You come in, I provide information, Reverend Barbara provides information. You get to decide and put your own words to it and decide how that resonates for you. Because that's what's important. But life, our essence, goes on in some way. If spirit is eternal, ever-expressing, then what spirit has made is eternal and ever-expressing. There's too much evidence to discount it, I think. I've heard it somewhere that fear is the fear of death is the core of all fears. But if we weren't afraid of that, how would life be? I know situations of death sometimes can be painful. But what I'm talking about is death itself. What if we weren't afraid of just that? Our culture has instilled in us that when a human being dies, it's a very bad thing. Humans aren't supposed to die. And they will they will keep prolonging life sometimes as long as they have to. But what if we're done? What if we finished? Funerals are now called a celebration of life. But what if it would be a celebration of what the life was and what the person did, and then a celebration of moving into the next experience that is greater and wonderful? What if we looked at life that way? I know that when someone dies, I do know this very much, that we miss them. The heart grieves for those that are no longer with us. But would we feel differently if we didn't think death was bad, if we didn't have that instilled in us? It's just a question. If immortality, eternality, and continuity of life were a basic, accepted idea in our culture, we would have nothing at the core to be afraid of. And we would also know that our natural, abundant, full nature is whole, is big, is wide, is expansive, and that we are whole. The Science of Mind book says, nature will not let us stay in any one place for too long. She will let us stay just long enough to gather the experience that's necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is a wise provision. For should we stay too long, we would become too set, too rigid, too inflexible. Nature demands the change in order that we may advance. When the change comes, we should welcome it with a smile on our lips and a song in our heart. Dr. Holmes says, it's not that dead men live again, but that a living man never dies. And spirit is forever taking form and withdrawing from that form that it has taken. This is the cycle and seasons of life. Therefore, change in the physical life is the only permanent reality about life, but the formless spirit life itself, that which we truly are, never changes. There is this formless life within you, within each of us. You did not begin, we cannot end. You are immortal and eternal. When the disciples asked Jesus, what is God's relationship to the dead? He replied, God is not a God of the dead, but a God of the living. And in his sight, all are alive. I remember in the old Western movies that we would watch, you'd see somebody was getting ready, they were going to shoot somebody, or they were going to hang him, and somebody would yell, get ready to meet your maker. Right? Remember that? But in reality, man is not going to meet his maker. He does not have to prepare to meet his maker. We never left our maker. Our maker did not leave us. And we see this, we meet him, we meet it every day, in every moment of our thought, in the question, in the silence of our soul, in the rising sun, in the snow that's falling today, in the eyes and smiles of the children this month, with Christmas, or with every holiday, even in the flowers that will bud in the spring. We see that maker, that God, that most high, the divine, in the joy of friendship and in love. So God is never separate from man, never separate from anything that it has created. And when it's time to leave this world, we expand into the next to a bigger knowing and a remembering of what it all is. So I invite you this week to look at what your idea, what your words are about immortality. And if in your mind and your heart that you feel that this is it, that's perfect. Because what each person holds about that idea is right. So I bless you and know that this is a good week. Thank you. And so I invite our practitioners to come forward as we take this into prayer. And if you would like to have prayer this afternoon, our practitioners will be in the prayer room. As I take a breath, I go to that space within that is wide and that is deep and that is unending. I recognize in this space that it is filled with love of the Most High that is undescribable. For I know that this is the place of the one that has made this world, the one that has made each and every creation, the one that has made me. And it is the one that sits right here in this space, in the heart of every individual here. The life that has been created by this one is a life of joy, filled with wholeness, with good, filled with that creative guidance that allows each individual to ask where to go and what to do. But I also know that life is created with that path of choice to be that great individual of free thinking, of a life that expresses that divine freedom, of a life that expresses each individual's desire and knowing. And that is good. I know that as we live this life, as I live this life, and for each individual here, that we come into our purpose, whether it's we are fully aware of that or not, each individual lives the life that is guided and divine, with divine purpose. And how each individual has lived that is taken with them as we complete our time and we lay this suit to rest. That what comes next is a love beyond description, an expansion bigger than our minds can know. And it is a continuation of the gift of God, which is life, in many forms. And so for that I give great thanks. I know that each individual life is guided by blessings and grace of love. And I know that it's not just individuals, it is this planet, this whole planet, that is embraced in spirit. And so we give thanks knowing that there is guidance that is divinely given for every minister, every priest, every rabbi, every teacher. And all are blessed. And I know the wholeness that expresses in that. And so with divine love and with gratitude, I release this prayer into the law, into the mechanics that makes it so. For I know that this, as it's spoken, is already done in the mind of God and is good and very good. And for that I say yes. And knowing this together, we say, and so it is. Amen.
I am so